sorry, again another one. As a visual artist and standing in an art institution, I'm compelled to respond to your mediating the entire contemporary art position of this country or perhaps this region. And I think perhaps more so because it's not just the result of creating modernism that the crisis is there perhaps, but I think it's also a result of perhaps art institutions, perhaps the theorists, cultural theorists who don't seem to get beyond the fact that, we work in relationship to other cultures, other locations. We're not living in isolation. And so perhaps the inability to connect contemporary practice with not just the West, but the East, amongst ourselves within the region. So I think that the crisis doesn't just fall on the shoulders of the visual artists. I think it falls on the shoulders of cultural thinkers, writers, institutions, particularly the way that art is being taught, how art is being understood. And I'd just like to refer to what Dr. said, because that's something that I think is true, which is that tradition is rooted in reality. Of course, it's rooted in the sacred, but it's also rooted in the present and the present reality. And so if we are to look at our present reality and work from that premise, then we are not going to be truthful to it unless we can deal with the crisis, unless we can deal with the flux, and unless we can deal.
Performing artists. Lady Gaga kya cheez hai? I mean, this is the ultimate evolution. I mean, this is the culmination of that evolution. It's really self-aggrandizement. वो चुपने छुपाने वाली बात वो खुद कहती है कि ये है. And on top of that, celebrating and highlighting that which is ugly about her. यहाँ तक भी बात पहुँच गई है. तो वही जो चीज़ आप विजुअल आर्टिस्ट में अब्दुल मुराद ने की निशानदेही की है, वही चीज़ आप विजुअल आर्ट परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट्स में भी आपको वही चीज़ मिल जाएगी. In every other academic discipline, the logic at work is exactly the same. So I agree with you.
If an institution is legitimizing a certain kind of art or certain kind of academic discourse in the West, let's say in the West, the problem is lying in the institution, whether it's a museum or university. I think we're in a very interesting position here in Pakistan right now, where institutions are developing. So the question I would put is to all three of you is, our institutions are also, I think, based on the same roots as Western institutions at the moment. Do you think the answers that we are looking for to our current dilemma, which is tradition and art, would come from outside the institutions? And if they would, then how would you include them in, if someone was to start thinking about restructuring, how would they include them?
Basically, the institutionalization of knowledge is one of the important characteristics of modern civilization. Richard Rorty believes that there are two dynamics of human thought. One is he considered as the will to truth. The other is will to knowledge. He believes that modernism is for will to knowledge. So modern institutions are concretizing this idea of will to knowledge. when you define something, for instance, when you define art, from modern perspective, it is intrinsically exclusive. You define something by virtue of the negation of something which is not considered to be art. So when you exclude something, you have to pick and you have to choose certain things and you have to institutionalize that. And that justifies a particular kind of discipline and that leads to compartmentalization of knowledge. For instance, in every art school you compartmentalize art in different domains and that domains define themselves with respect to their field of specialization. That in fact basically a modern strategy to divide reality into its parts and try to understand things in parts. Whereas in virtue truth, you understand reality in its totality rather than dividing it into parts. So, in our part of the world, institutionalization of art or institutionalization of anything that eventually leads to modernization of given tradition that will select certain areas and use specialization and expertise in that area which postmodernists don't agree. How could you consider some piece of art on the basis of aesthetics that it is not right? This right and wrong, correct and incorrect is the category of rationality. So when you develop institution, you apply category of reason or categories of reason to interpret whether it is correct or incorrect. Whereas in art or in traditional art, you don't have these categories. So I'm afraid the dynamics of the contemporary society in which we are living that eventually lead to the compartmentalization of knowledge and that eventually affect the possibility of alternative dynamics of artistic expression other than modernism.
Can I respond? I think this is a very, very good question. And I think we should be really looking at this question carefully for those of us who are in the academia. And without a doubt, this is the greatest competitive advantage we have over the West, is our backwardness. Our backwardness is the greatest competitive advantage we have, especially with respect to our institutions, and with specific reference to our academic institutions. In the 1960s, 65, 66, Peter Berger, who was a sociologist, wrote a small little book, Sociology and Invitation. In 1986, he wrote an article, Sociology, a Disinvitation, with a question mark. Lamenting about lamenting about the pathetic condition of sociology in American academia and the absolute necessity for reforming and reformulating sociology, recovering its original spirit, and coming to the conclusion that it is not possible in any of the major universities in the United States. This task of reformation and reclamation of the original spirit, because, as the point was just made, the institution has become so dominant, you are automatically, alternative, a particular spectrum of possibilities is already ruled out. If we were half as smart as we claim we are, we in this room, we're not half as smart as we are, and there is empirical evidence to support this. Because as we are designing our curriculums, the way when we are shaping our institution, what did दोनों बड़ी कॉपी कर रहे हैं, और वो भी बहुत अभी एक तो होता है कि चंगी नकल मारना, और नकल भी सही तरह मारी जा रही है। It's pathetic. I mean, it's pathetic. बाकी आप एक अपने दूसरे को शाबाश करते रहे, जितना मर्जी करना है। ये चीज है जो बाहर वालों को नहीं जाती है. This is our greatest advantage, is precisely what you said. The institutions are young, they are in their formative stages. If the correct decisions are made, we can overcome this conundrum, which the impasse which are already present in other institutions. And I think if we do not do that, we're utter failures. Utter, complete failures. एक दूसरे को जितनी मर्जी शाबाश देते हैं. लेकिन मैं लम्स में पढ़ाता हूँ, एक इतनी बड़ी इसका नाम है, पाकिस्तान में के बाहर के, और ये this is a debate, this is a debate taking place in that institution, but that this debate is subaltern. खुल के ये बात, इतनी हिम्मत भी नहीं है कि इस इशू को खुल के with academic honesty, objectivity and integrity इस बात को डिस्कस किया जाए. हमारे में इतनी भी हिम्मत नहीं है. Because the party that wants to mimic the other side, that party is so powerful, they will not allow alternate voices to emerge. But again, these are the material conditions. That doesn't change the responsibility I have on my shoulders. I and we are required to do our best.
आपकी जो क्लासिक सबसे पूछना है, आपने कुछ जवाब तो मुझे अभी दे दिया है पूछने से पहले. आप एक कहते हैं कि मॉडर्न कैपिटलिज्म और मॉडर्न आर्ट में दे आर इंटिमेटली रिलेटेड टू ईच अदर. तो ये जो अजारादारी है कैपिटलिज्म की, इसी तरीके से आर्ट में भी अजारादारी है.
आर्ट में भी
ये अजारादारी है, इस जो उनकी सुप्रीमेसी है. तो कैपिटलिज्म के लिए तो बहुत से इंटरनेशनल थ्रू आउट हिस्ट्री आते रहे हैं. सोशलिज्म के अगेंस्ट खड़ा हुआ है, इस्लाम खड़ा हुआ है. लेकिन आर्ट के अंदर जो इजारादारी है, जो भी है, इसको ख़त्म करने के लिए कोई सॉल्यूशंस आप सजेस्ट कर सकते हैं? क्योंकि ये न सिर्फ वेस्ट में है बल्कि इस रीजन में भी है कि यू हैव वी वांट टू से समथिंग, यू डोंट हैव एनी से. एंड तो आप कोई ऐसा क्लू दे सकते हैं कि उसको हम उसमें एक डेंट लगा सकें?
मेरी उर्दू इतनी चंगी नहीं है. इजारादारी कितनी मतलब है? डोमिनेंस. आपका सवाल है कि आर्ट के अंदर,
हाँ, आर्ट के अंदर भी डोमिनेंस इजारादारी इसका मतलब ये है कि यानी कि जो आपने अभी कहा कि लोग कहना चाहते हैं लेकिन उनको मौका ही नहीं दिया जाता.
देखिए, हर दौर में ये मसला है. It is not the first time we as human beings are faced with this situation. हर दौर में there has been a dominant narrative in any given cultural setting. I mean, in our most ideal situations, मदीने को ले लें, anything, कोई भी, there's a dominant narrative, there are alternate voices, the alternate voices are being marginalized by the dominant narrative. So किस तरह वो space create की जाए? And I cannot answer that question in any meaningful way other than to say, without courageous individuals, ये काम हो नहीं सकता. वो लोग जो जुनूनी हैं, जो तैयार हैं हर चीज़ दांव पे लगाने के लिए कि ये काम करना है. मैंने ये जो पोजीशन है, I will find a voice for this position at a platform. And दूसरा ये है, not on my terms. दूसरी ये बात है, I am willing, जो भी वो मेरे से चाहते हैं, वो चाहे भी ब्लैक जाके किसी PhD कर गया हो, ठीक है जी, मैं तैयार है इसका काम करने के लिए. होते मेरे ब्लैक जाके थोड़ा PhD नहीं होते, मेरा रगड़ा थोड़ा लगूगा, ठीक है जी, मैं बर्दाश्त करने के लिए तैयार हूँ. That type of जुनूनियत, इस तरह के जब लोग होंगे वो ये काम करेंगे. जब ये लोग हो गए, तो जो आपने सवाल पूछा है in its technical specifics, वो लोग इस जवाब को technical specifics में वो देंगे, मैं नहीं दे सकता.
undergoing a crisis of sorts, where the staunchest defenders, or let's say the most aggressive defenders of traditionalism, tend to negate the notion of love for the other or minorities, or shall we even say create Islamic tradition. And they suffer therefore from the sense of amnesia, where they are subjugating histories and narratives that are not, that do not form the majority viewpoint.
Very valid point. In the area of the sociology of religion, this conclusion has been reached that religious fundamentalism will take a particular part of tradition and present themselves to everyone as being the upholders and defenders of tradition. How, if we look at what they're saying and look at their writings, look at their thought, it is a very, very modern reinterpretation of tradition.
I'm sorry, I couldn't. It's reactionary as opposed to foundational. Is that what you're trying to say?
It's reactionary, but claiming to going back to the foundations, right? But going back to the foundation by jumping over history. Falling over modernity. Bruce Lawrence की किताब है, Defenders of God. आप उसकी conclusion देखते हैं कि studies Islam is a study of Muslim, Christian, Jewish fundamentalist groups. Karen Armstrong की किताब है, The Battle of God. So different scholars, independently of each other, have come to the conclusion that religious fundamentalism is a very, very modern phenomenon. And it's in the Jewish case, Muslim case, Christian case, it's very clear that they're making certain theological claims that you do not find anywhere in tradition prior to the advent of modernity. So, ये बात आपकी बिल्कुल सही है.
We'll take one last question and then we'll break for lunch, which is right outside. I'm sorry, I just want to make the announcement and then please go ahead with your question. If you wish to pray, there is a namaz area downstairs, just one floor below, and there are restrooms right next to it for men and women.
My name is somehow I'm concluding on my personal level that religious tradition is going to be the final solution. You all agree, it seems that you all agree with this sort of conclusion. But my question is that possible that who should I follow looking towards religious tradition? Is it there any other form, being a student, just philosophy student or a sociologist? Is it any other kind of working force or driving force which can lead the human towards a peaceful world other than religious force? Because the religious is heavily people are using misinterpreting and using manipulating religious guidance. So what do you think about that? And I was keen at something that you can shortly or briefly, there is no mentioning of the Marxist point of view tradition as survival of human management.
In fact, I have not provided any conclusion or any solution to the problem. In fact, my presentation was specifically on the analysis of the antagonistic relationship between modernistic and traditional forces. And I have also provided you a solution with the perspective of postmodernism and also excavate the basic incoherences in postmodern analysis. The fundamental question is that whenever you try to address a problem, it is important that why you want to solve that problem. What is basic, the fundamental impetus which makes you realize that this is the problem. If peace is the problem, if continuity of human existence is the problem, if well-being and progress is the problem, then answer will be different. different answers can be provided because the nature of the question asked is different. We are living in a world in which modernity, religion, tradition, etc., these are all there. These are the fact of the life. The question is that how you are going to resolve the problem. We, at least I believe, that the solution provided by the religion is comparatively more consistent and more overwhelming as compared to the rest of the solutions I have. But it is important that what actually the object of knowledge you have. The object of knowledge determines the source of the knowledge. If your object of knowledge is this bottle, then appropriate source of knowledge would be your five senses. But if your source of knowledge is a spirit, then sense experience will not be the appropriate solution. Similarly, if you try to solve the problem of humanity, you have to address certain parameters on what ground you are going to resolve that issue. Modernity has provided a solution, and over 300 years we have experienced that the solution provided by modernity was rested upon incoherent philosophical foundations. Religion is not consequentialist. Our solutions are generally being consequentialist. The consequence of the religion will be determined after death. Once Father Francis has asked what actually success means, Father said, success means when you die, God will say you, well done my son, thou sins have been forgiven, here is heaven, enjoy. That is the basic parameter of religion. When we address the issue of a problem in this world, you should be clear. I am not imposing what you should think about. There is a consciousness of being in the world. There is a consciousness of being with God. It's up to you. If you want to have a consciousness of being in the world, what Heidegger has said, and he was one of the most profound thinker of existentialism, he said, death is the ultimate potentiality. Do you have any answer to the question? He said, no, I don't have any answer to the question because my existence is between where from and where to. So I don't know where from and I don't know where to. The religion provides you answer to the question where from and where to. It's up to you. Right? I am on the side that where from and where to are more important. If you think that where from and where to are not important, the between where from and where to is more important, that's up to you. As far as Marxism is concerned, Marxism, the fundamental problem of Marxism is that Marxists consider human consciousness as non-problematic. They believe the fundamental problem of human being is scarcity. If you abandon the possibility of scarcity, you will resolve the problem. But we have experienced the scarcity has been transcended. As Dr. Basit has identified, we have transcended the scarcity at least in western part of the world. But we are not going to let people share what we have produced. Why? Because there is a problem in human consciousness. Religion tells you cannot resolve this problem without intervention of the body. So it's quite judgmental. In fact, it's not the dialectics or the philosophical, but the question was personal, and I am telling you the personal answer that it's up to you whether you are answering this question by virtue of consciousness of being in the world or consciousness of being with God.
Thank you, everyone. And so we conclude our first session. Lunch is served outside. We will reconvene at 2 o'clock. Thank you.